self-compassion
Yeah.
seems to be the theme in all of these answers that you're giving me, which are knowing your limits is
Yeah.
self-compassion. Honoring your limits is self-compassion. So we need to bring that into our sense of interpersonal biology, right? And how am I able to serve in this moment, and where do I need to practice more self-care? And then as well as like, just how much can I give?
I think we're basically confronted with a paradox. And the paradox is in the world that you're talking about is people want to give, they want to contribute, but there's also the resource that they have to give, and they're getting feedback from that. And this is where learning or honoring your own body, being aware of it, is critical. And that is what I said earlier. We, as a culture, do a poor job in witnessing our own bodies or honoring our own bodily state. And this requires a degree of focus and respect and understanding. The reason we do such a poor job of that is that we're basically conditioned to do a poor job. Starting from early childhood, we're told not to listen to the body, sit still, not to move around. We're basically conditioned to turn off the feedback loops that evolved to optimize our health. So as we numb our body, we find out we can function better in the world. So what do we mean function better? We can be more productive, make more money, reach different objectives. But what about functioning of our body? It's compromising it. So we end up living a life that disrupts homeostatic processes at the expense of being able to accumulate more or be more successful in anything that we're wanting to do, including doing good for others. So we have to acknowledge that we are a physiological resource, and we have to respect it, and we have to nurture it as well. And so we start even entering or bringing to the table this notion, I have to nourish my body. We start sounding to ourselves as if we're self-centered, especially with other people suffering with things we need to do. But we can't support others unless we are a viable resource. So we're stuck with these very interesting paradoxes that are basically style of life issues or philosophy of life issues.
Well, philosophy of life and philosophy of organizations, and
Yeah.
the idea of looking at productivity, as you said, as like an end goal, when at the same time we have things such as reimbursement rates that are looked at from patient satisfaction. So if we want to give quality care and authentic compassion to our patients, because they can tell if we're faking it, then we have to give our frontliners resources. That's good business.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. It will change outcomes. So when you give authentic cues of safety, you reduce threat responses in others, and the threat responses are the responses that kill us. They increase inflammation, they disrupt homeostatic function, they create disease state. So it makes sense. And in a medical environment, people are suffering from what we would call stress-related symptoms, but those are merely a physiology that's shifted from a co-regulatory calm state to a state that is under chronic threat. The metaphor I often use is that we live in a matrix, kind of like the movie. But the matrix is really, we're being bombarded with cues of threat, and we're just kind of navigating through this matrix of cues of threat. And no one said, hey, maybe we don't have to. And this is what would happen if we could, in a sense, had safe time or safe spaces. Not that we can get rid of all the cues of threat, that we can have envelopes of time and space where those cues of threat aren't there. And that's what co-regulation attempts to do. It tries to negate the effects of those cues of threat, and then we become a resource for others.
And we know from research that patients have better health outcomes when they feel cared for by their providers, but they can only feel cared for if it's true, authentic compassion.